Jonathan, I was going to follow up with this question. You talked about grazing management of tropicals for the legume. Do you want to mention something about grazing management for that legume coming out of a very good winter with the grass?
Yeah, so I suppose thinking about that good year of subclover or ceradella, and this year would be one of those years where we're seeing, 8 or 9 tonne legume crops out there, and they're pretty impressive. I suppose it depends on the species. I think the bloat risk this year has been quite high, so that has to go into it. But if we're looking at something like ceradella, that's not as bad. A great year if you're looking for seed set, I suppose. So if you're looking at paddocks where you want to encourage a bit of flowering seed set to actually build up that seed bank, I think capitalising on good years where you've got that excess biomass is quite good. But again, I think a bit of grazing management to try and open that sward, like those shoulder points, March and October, and they shift a bit. Depends on the season, depends on the break, but trying to open up that sward so there's space for things to do what they need to, but it's not as critical. The digit's there, it's a perennial, it's more about reshooting. So I'd be looking more at capitalising on seed set, really. And I know there's quite a few producers that are doing that this year, making the most of a good year.
Any supplementary comments from the panel? Suze?
Yeah, I agree. It is really important having a great year like we've had. It's a perfect opportunity to be able to get your legumes or have your legumes set seed to be able to build that seed bank. When it's in a tropical pasture, there are a couple of times when we can actually lose a tropical pasture, or as in kill the tropical pasture. One of those is when in a really good winter like we've had and it actually gets swamped and the tropical pasture just can't get any sunlight and it just struggles. So there's been 2016 was one year where we actually had a number of reports of tropical pastures dying due to extreme legume biomass. So I can't remember the number, but we just did an assessment a couple of weeks ago, 6 weeks ago with our subclover, and it had 4 tonne?
6 tonne.
6 tonne of subclover. So, it was this thick and just, you couldn't see a drop of grass underneath it. We did another assessment earlier this week and you could just start seeing a few leaves come up through it. So just be mindful of that, when you're actually looking at some of these pastures.
Is there an opportunity now, Suze, now that the bloat risk is declining rapidly because it's got hot and dry quickly, have we missed the window to try and get some of that biomass down? And then if we get a rainfall event, our tropicals will still come through?
Absolutely.
It's hard in a year when you get so much feed coming at you, but if you can perhaps at least focus on some of the paddocks and stock these clovers a bit earlier before that peak. The best way to get seed set in a subclover is to graze it quite hard through the wintertime. Tends to encourage it to put on more leaf junctions, and it actually flowers from those leaf junctions. So by relatively close grazing for the wintertime actually helps encourage your subclovers to set more seed. And then by keeping that stand from getting to, we can't do it when there's so much come at you for every paddock, but if you can keep it from getting to 4 tonne of dry matter in the first place, it's more likely to get those seed pods into the soil as well. Particularly we use a lot of the brachycalycinum subclovers in this part of the world, and they're not great at burying their seed. So by keeping them relatively short as much as we can, we do actually increase the seed set that way in a good year. And the same goes for, we use a lot of arrow leaf in these systems, and it's an aerial seeding clover. But if we can keep it grazed before it really gets away on us, we tend to find that it will still set seed in a more prostrate fashion, and we don't get quite the tonnes of dry matter, the tonnes of seed set perhaps, but we get enough seed set to go forward with, and it's a way of stopping it from smothering those grasses, I guess.
Go.
Yep.
So just follow up for that. So I agree, it's not always possible to be able to put good grazing pressure on all pastures. Have you got any clients, or have you done it yourselves, where you have conserved some of that fodder as hay or silage? That way then you're opening the canopy and
Yep.
restoring quality feed.
Yeah, as long as it's not again, you're removing, as soon as you go for hay, you're removing the lot, seed and everything, and there's an opportunity for it to really to set a lot of seed. So that's the consideration. But if you've got a a thick sward of arrow leaf that's been setting 1,000 kilos of seed per hectare for a number of years anyway, you've got a plant that you'll never get rid of if you try. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's an opportunity, and it's the things like annual ryegrass, winter ryegrass that you get in those same sorts of seasons that will also fall down and lodge and can smother your tropical grasses too. So you're also helping to manage that part of the sward as well in that time.
Yeah, because your digit grass is usually quite early in its growth stage, so it's generally at its highest quality as well when that arrow leaf is setting seed. So often it can be a good time. But I guess I'd take it back to something that Jono said sort of at the start, that those two plants are often at battle, and it's very rare that our tropical pasture has an opportunity to lose. So when we do get those really good legume years, I reckon it's really worth letting them set seed, because I reckon it's probably 1 in every 10 years that we see an awesome legume year versus an awesome grass year, especially in the more western area where I work in.
So you're asking about the summer growing legume in a temperate pasture?
Yeah.
John, do you have any experience with that one? I've never done it.
So it's not as common, I suppose. So thinking about the environment here, we're in a summer dominant rainfall pattern. So we're trying, or quite often we're using a seafloor grass to maximise the use of that rainfall. So efficient capture of moisture. But there's enough rainfall over winter where we are then looking at trying to supplement that with legume. So whether that be a lucerne or a subclover, that's where the opportunity is to try and use a bit of water over winter, but also keep some green feed. I'd say by and large in an environment where you could maintain a summer legume, you would also be maintaining a summer grass, would be my gut feel. So I don't think there'd be many environments where you would be looking at a winter grass. I'm just thinking the further north you go, the more rainfall you get over summer, the less chance to do anything through winter. So really it's quite often we're starting with our grass base, like we're figuring out, well, what is it that we can grow, because it's the bulk, it's providing us with the biomass. So let's say digit, we get 12, 14 tonne of biomass, and we might be getting 4 tonne out of our legume. So really the grass is driving production, and then the legume is sort of complementing that for feed quality or for NFIX as well. So that it's not that common.
Probably just along the same vein, I guess when you have lucerne growing with your temperate grasses, it's probably behaving in a similar fashion to what you're asking about. And I've actually gone away from putting lucerne with temperate grasses in most situations, and for a number of reasons. And one is that if you've got a deep soil type, it is possible for the lucerne to get its roots below the grass. So if you've got a soil type that is, say, more than 1.5 metres up to 10 metres deep, and the lucerne can get below the grass, over time, when you get a few hot and dry summers, it can give the grass a hard time. Conversely, if you've got a soil type shallower than that, the grasses with their fibrous root system in a dry season can actually give the lucerne a hard time. And I've seen a situation with a sloping paddock where the soil depth varied down the slope, and the deeper end of the slope, the bottom part of the slope was dominated by lucerne over time, and the top half of the slope was dominated by phalaris over time, to illustrate that. But the main reason I've gone away from having a perennial like lucerne in with my temperate grasses is that I like them to go a little bit dormant through the summertime, so that as soon as we do get our autumn break, these things have stored a little bit of moisture, but they've also had a spell and they're jumping away, and that's when I really want them to fire in that shoulder season. And by having an annual legume in there as well, they are breaking down, they're dying off and breaking down over that summer period, and very quickly returning whatever component of nitrogen they're going to cycle for us. They're doing it in a much more expedient fashion than within a 1 to 2 year time frame, as compared to a perennial where the bulk of nitrogen fixation from a perennial is when the roots and crowns break down in lucerne, for example. So.
Okay, there was another question.
Whenever you guys are talking, and been living here for a long time. It's always about summer dominant rainfall. And it's actually not true in a lot of places. I've been doing our own rainfall figures and temperature figures now for 21 years on the property that we're on and live on. And it's about 50-50. So when you go to make decisions about putting in grasses and legumes, you say, oh, this is a point of case, winter active phalaris. Well, I need a bit of summer active phalaris as well. And so it's just not one or the other. You've got to almost broaden your whole horizon about the varieties and species that you want to plant.
Yeah.
And you hope will grow there. It's not all about summer dominant species.
Absolutely, Brett. And I reckon you're right. Right here, I think we are on the, and Sean would know exactly, but I think we probably are very close to 50-50 here. But as soon as you go slightly north of here, it very quickly starts getting more dominant. But the other feature we have here is our evaporation rates through the summertime. So while even if we do get 50-50 rainfall, our plant available water through the summertime is almost always going to be a limiting factor, whereas in winter often it's not such a limiting factor. But you're right. Each of those farms that I had put up those examples from with the photos of the temperate pastures have at least as much area of subtropical in as they do temperate, and that is the way that is the way we try and manage. So on all of those farms, we have areas of native grass, we have areas of subtropical, we have areas of temperate, and we have an area of annual forage. And that's sort of, I guess, the system we've arrived at to try and manage that variability. And, we're always trying to come up with better ideas and tweaking trying to understand how much of each of those components as a percentage we need to have in. But you're absolutely right, that is the challenge.
We've been value adding. We've got a slightly different philosophy that Suzanne knows about, where I don't spray anything. I haven't sprayed anything on our farm for 21 years. Just want to move away completely from it and build up more organic biology. So we just go in and value add to what's already there. And like this spring, it's been ryegrass, brome, crazy. It's just gone on. And we'll wait till that breaks down. We don't need, that's your biome that's going back on your soil and rotting down and all the little things. And we'll go in about May and we'll just directly fill in what we want. There is solution with the arrowleaf, maybe a bit of chicory and whatnot, and just let it rip, from then on. But, we sometimes only get a week of spring. This year we had 2 months. And then in 4 days ago it turned hot, and then we'll be just bloody hot now right through to March, April. So, you have to have a whole range of species have to be ready to put in to maximise maybe a 20 or 30 mil downfall that comes once every 4 weeks. It makes sowing your pastures just really, really difficult. It's not just a magic thing to do. Yeah.
And I guess I'd add to that, we look at our summer grasses and we know that they're really good at capturing moisture. We know that even if we are 50-50, in summertime we're getting those more intensive rainfall events. So our summer grasses are going to be a lot better at capturing that rainfall. And then I like to think of our tropical grasses as really having quite often a fallow over winter, where we know we're getting that much lower evaporation. The rainfall that we're getting is generally a lot softer. We're getting much higher infiltration in that winter time. So for me, that's a better fallow period. So I guess what we're trying to do is sort of mimic what we're seeing in our native pastures, where most of our native pastures would have been generally a summer growing grass. We've got a couple that are temperate, but most of our native pastures in my area are C4 plants with winter growing herbs and things like that. So I think what we're doing, focusing on these tropicals, is working. Like Tony said, I don't think we can get away from growing winter crops if we're looking for a highly productive system. But I personally think that focusing on a summer grass is still a pretty sustainable system for our area.
So what, you don't think putting winter wheats in and that sort of stuff?
Oh, 100%. As I said, I think Tony's dead right on the fact that we'll need those winter crops to be able to provide quality, especially in our production system where that's where we've got young stock that need a high quality feed. We're not going to get that without sowing a forage crop.
I think it's about diversity, which I think is pretty much where you are coming from. So you need species that can respond to your summer rainfall. You need species that can respond to your winter rainfall.
Yeah.
You need something that's actually going to be able to work for you on those shoulders on either time, because that's when you need to be managing your grass for your legume, or managing your legume for your grass. So you need that patchwork in order to be able to have that quality feed year round to be able to meet your livestock requirements.
You can change your livestock requirements too to suit. Like you might say, righto, I'm not interested in that, so we'll just turn off weaners. Straight off mum, they're gone. Or, we want to be a trading operation. We want to turn off a finished article all year round. Well, how do we achieve that from the pastures we can grow without dragging the grain cart out now because the oats is cut out? So it depends on your agenda from your animals as well too, what your system needs to look like.
Sometimes you need to put in just about everything. It's like a swath of about 15 different kind of species, because there'll come a time throughout the year where one's going gangbusters with 2 or 3 of them, the others are just going, no, we can't handle it. And you might say that they're out competing each other for moisture, and sure, that's an issue. But then you get a 30 mil downpour and everything's hunky-dory again. And then 4 weeks later, it's exactly the same, balancing act. Some plants are doing well, some aren't. But, some plants are pulling moisture and nutrient. Nobody seems to mention much. From deep down, bringing it up. And at the moment, in the last 4 weeks, I've got 7 thistles growing like you wouldn't believe. They're going gangbusters. And our sheep are eating the tops off them. I love them. Sometimes we have outbreaks of purple top like swore you put in woolly pod bench, but it's not. And our sheep come in and they just eat it to the ground.
Okay, excellent discussion. Maximise your options and focus on what's within your control. And there's a gentleman at the back there who wants to ask a question. I think there's a hand up over here afterwards. So
One of the issues with tropical pastures, that come winter time, they die off, and you're basically, from a production model, since they're useless. I just want to throw this to the whole panel. One of the things that's been thrown around in trying to maintain nutrition and the usefulness of that paddock is actually to sow a low rate of a forage as oats or wheat into that tropical pasture come, say, April, May. 1, to tickle the tropical pastures, 2, to get some fertiliser in, and 3, to actually use that paddock to get the cattle to chew that down, all that dead meal out of the way, and get some return. Just sort of, you had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'll take that one. I guess from my point of view, as I mentioned before, I see that as that winter time as a fallow period for my tropicals. On the other side of that, you've got this tropical grass that's just pulled every bit of moisture out of that soil. So often we don't get that opportunity to sow a forage crop because there's no moisture there for it. We might get a season where it works, but especially, as I say, from west of here, it's very rare that we'd get a season where we'd get enough growth from a cereal crop to warrant the input. So I'd be more inclined to say, right, if I want to utilise that, let's supplementary feed. So with a protein source so that they will utilise those tropical grasses. I'd be looking at, I'd also be looking at my livestock system. Is that a time where I'm going to need high quality feed? Can I switch my livestock system around so that I can put old cows or something like that are dry on it rather than trying to aim for production at that specific time? But it is a tough one. That's generally when we're weaning and looking for a bit of quality feed. So that's where our forage cereals come in. But we fallow for that because, it's cost a lot of money to sow a forage cereal crop, as Tony showed us.
I'll make a start and then you can finish if you like. I don't think you use any one tool. I think you need to pull out your toolbox and use a whole range of different tools. Use your apps, be monitoring your pastures. If you You are aware of your paddocks. You're aware of what they are doing at different times, different seasons. So if it's a lighter soil, you know you're only going to get 4 weeks or 6 weeks growth from that particular pasture in that paddock. So you have an understanding of what your pastures can deliver, what your feed base can deliver. So then you allot that along with your forecasts. You then have a better idea of being able to go, okay, well, it looks like I've got X number of weeks in front of me, this, and then you need to prioritise your livestock. So you might have your breeding stock. You might have your fat stock, your trades. You need to start prioritising your livestock and what you're going to put on what type of feed. That's a very high level answer, isn't it? There you go.
Yeah, I don't know how detailed you can get. I would reiterate the experience. I think there's not much that can go past that. It's hard to come up with a measure or a metric if you don't have any experience at all. I mean, you could say, look, let's look at rolling rainfall, for example. So you roll in average, use your forecasters. But the problem, as we've identified already today, there's so much variability. Microclimates in different areas, like no one farm's the same as the next. And I think nothing goes past just that year on year, building up that understanding of your system, trying to manage your system as effectively as possible. I suppose in terms of where we are in this part of the world, we tend not to push our systems to the edge as much as other places. So you go further south, and particularly towards the coast, where you're in a system where you really, utilisation's high. If you're looking at 60, 70% utilisation, you're really sort of pushing your system to the wall, where here we're not quite that hard, I suppose. So I'd say there's a little bit of wriggle room as well in some of our systems, which helps. So if we're down at 30, 40% utilisation, and a year like this year where there's so much excess biomass, that sort of helps. I suppose looking out there today though, and I mean, I suppose a few of us are starting to notice things are changing a bit, but I think that just comes with time, sort of getting used to what species you've got, when they're growing, how they're growing, and yeah. And
thanks, Jonathan. I'm getting evil stares from over there all the time, but you wanted a Q&A, so there's a question from the gentleman in the back here, and then the one in front of him, and that's so quick fire responses from the panel, please.
Yeah, very quickly. I was down here a few years ago, and you had some very exciting looking diamanthus and plots. I'm just wondering what happened with that. I don't seem to be hearing a lot about it. Is it good, bad, or will it grow, or where are we?
So the legume you're referring to is Desmanthus.
Yes.
We still have some down the paddock and we're still playing with it. Probably its biggest there's probably two limitations to it. One is that it is susceptible to alfalfa mosaic virus. So lucerne is also gets alfalfa mosaic virus, but it doesn't affect its productivity. Desmanthus, on the other hand, does. Especially some varieties are very, very badly damaged by it. So that's the first one, which makes it difficult in our system. The second part is its growth rate is not as high as some of our grasses. So when we were trying it with digitgrass would grow faster, and we come back to this competition between species that everyone's been speaking about today. The grass just outcompetes the legume, so we weren't getting that productivity. So they're the two main things, and I think part of the reason with that productivity is because it's not hot enough here.
Just quickly, the minimum critical levels for fertility for the clovers we saw, what are the minimums for like the temperate pastures? Do you have minimum?
Yeah, certainly there's been work done over the years, Jason. I would suggest that, when that chart was talking coal LP, it's not quite cut and dried. You've got phosphorus buffer index and those sorts of things with those soils as well. But generally speaking, things like the subclover that were running around that 32, I think, on that chart, that's probably about where you want to be with your grasses on your red loam soils as well.
That's for subs and temperate.
Yep. The other point I'd note is, the work has been done obviously, and it's very good work on the ability of things like Ceradilla to pick up, or to have a lower critical level of phosphorus. But I would also, whenever I'm asked about it or we have a discussion about it, I like to point out we're still removing the same amount of phosphorus when we sell our animals at the front gate or our product at the front gate. So just because you can get a lower critical level and still get 90% pasture growth, doesn't mean we should run our soils down or allow our soils to run down to those levels, in my opinion, because it's a long way back up again. And all these things like phosphorus are not getting cheaper, and they're a finite resource in the world. So yeah, if we go to the lowest common denominator, it's a tough kick to get back up again. That's what I would say.